think I've got a helper today. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you probably think I have an unhealthy fixation on trains and high-capacity buses. But really, I'm all about moving people through dense city environments as efficiently as possible. And when it comes to high-capacity urban mobility, I've seen the future. And that future is small, low-occupancy sedans in tunnels. All about the Las Vegas Loop coming your way. This is City Nerd, weekly content on cities and transportation. Viewer-suggested topics always welcome down in the comments, but this is the #1 video I wanted to make when I relocated to Vegas earlier this year. Because people, this is it. The future of transportation. Closed tunnel systems constructed by the Boring Company with electric autonomous vehicles, well, theoretically, manufactured by Tesla Inc. And the only place you can experience this so far is at the Las Vegas Convention Center. Well, I rode the LVCC Loop, and in a minute I'm gonna tell you how it all works. And I'm gonna tell you why it's such a game changer. But first, let's give a little background. The Las Vegas Convention Center is one of the largest in the world, sprawling over 3 different main halls, the north, the south, and the west, on around 175 acres, and it's around a mile from end to end. So before the loop happened, if there was an event that was using all 3 buildings and you needed to get from one end to the other in like the 15 minutes you might get between conference sessions, it just wasn't gonna happen. So my understanding is the convention authority was looking at some sort of fixed guideway system to shuttle people between the 3 halls. And when they went to procurement, the Boring Company swooped in with a super low bid for a 3-station system, which confusingly is called the Loop, but it's actually just a straight line with 1 tunnel in each direction. It opened in April 2021, and it was originally supposed to be high speed and autonomous, but artificial intelligence is hard, and so it's just people driving cars back and forth. So I've been up to the convention center a couple times to check it out. My intention was I was gonna do some hard-hitting journalism and ask the tough questions. But, you know, journalism is a skill and it's just one I don't possess. So instead, I'm just gonna do what I always do and talk over some footage I edited together. So the first time I went to the National Automobile Dealers Association show, NADA, which took place in early March and was, I don't know, even less fun than I thought it would be. The second time I went was in late May, and your intrepid reporter managed to get a lanyard and a badge for like a CBD and hemp expo. It was a sacrifice I was willing to make in the interest of quality investigative reporting. And I was super excited to ride in the tunnels again, but what the f***? Like, can they just close the whole system during a convention with no explanation? Well, yeah, apparently. So I did get to ride the LVCC Loop the first time, just not the second, but that was cool because when I came back last week, I got to get an up close and personal look at the way the stations are laid out without the attendants giving me the evil eye. So let's take a look at how this whole thing operates. Each of the 3 stations has 10 loading bays for pickup and drop off. The West Station has a couple extra holding bays. And they're designed with sawtooth cuts so the cars can always pull forward out of their spots. You never have to engage the reverse. This is kind of like a bastardization of how a transit center is designed, with an island in the middle for passenger waiting. The west and the south stations are at grade in repurposed surface parking lot areas, while the central station is below grade, so it was, I imagine, quite a bit more expensive of an undertaking. My understanding is at peak times, like the Consumer Electronics Show, the system can operate up to 60 cars, meaning you might have up to 30 cars in the sawtooths at any one time and the rest in transit between stations. The system claims to be able to move 4,400 people an hour, which to me, as someone who's worked in transit and traffic engineering, is a really weird way to measure capacity. Usually you want to measure throughput past a fixed point. My understanding is, for safety reasons, they're trying to keep 6-second gaps between vehicles, so let's math it out. At 6-second frequencies, that's a max of 600 vehicles passing a fixed point every hour. The vehicles they're using appear to carry 3 passengers max, so that's 1,800 an hour. Which, well, congratulations, you just built a one-lane vehicular tunnel. For comparison, a single subway tube like under the East River carries over 26,000 people an hour. So I went in with the hope of using the system at a peak time where I might just happen to witness an operations snafu that I could film and make viral on social media. But instead what I got was the opposite and somehow much worse. But let's back up a bit first. You know, there's a huge amount of what passes for transit discourse that's concerned with how much it costs to build and operate transit systems in the US. And I sort of get it, although pretty much everyone I've ever worked with at a transit agency is kind of hell-bent on controlling costs. Like in service planning, you do all kinds of fairly complex stuff with bus routing and scheduling in the hopes of saving on driver payroll, since labor is such a significant component of the cost of providing service. You do whatever you can to reduce the labor cost per passenger, including renting articulated and double-decker buses. Yet, here we have a quote-unquote transit system where the passenger-to-driver ratio is probably somewhere between 1 and 2 to 1. And that's only when the cars are actually moving. Most of the time, at least when I was there for NADA, the vast majority of the cars were just sitting waiting for passengers. Can you imagine if a public agency designed a service that had that kind of labor cost per passenger? Everybody involved would be fired almost immediately. Maybe there's something I'm missing though. I mean, the guy who runs Tesla and the Boring Company is a multi-billionaire and I'm not. So let's give the LVCC Loop a pass and assume this is the future and I'm just not smart enough to understand it. Now that my eyes have been opened, going to like big airports just isn't the same anymore. You know, the ones that have multiple terminals that are too far apart to walk between. Now I'm just flabbergasted when they make me use like a tram to get from the terminal to the baggage claim. I mean, I've already seen what innovation looks like, and it certainly isn't platform level, automated, fixed guideway systems with tons of capacity and zero labor cost. That's old tech. Now, what you really want is a bunch of individual vehicles that just carry 1 or 2 people at a time, that don't work for people with disabilities, that you can't roll your luggage onto. So someone just go talk to the airport industry and tell them to wake up because the revolution is passing them by. Okay, the truth is, I wanted to wait on this video until they open the next phase of the Las Vegas Loop. And in a minute, I'll get to what that next phase is and why I didn't bother waiting. But first, customary reminder to give the video a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out the Patreon if you want to support the channel more directly. You might have noticed I never sponsor products on this channel. Trust me, I get emails every day from people who want me to sponsor some crypto thing or like an NFT or some godforsaken app that I have no idea what it does or why anyone would care. This isn't to say I won't ever sponsor something on this channel, but like Cheesecake Factory hasn't contacted me yet, so there you have it. Hey, bud. And this is the usual time when I check subscriber count. I skipped last week and then my subscriber number went kind of crazy. So I can actually fill 12 MLB stadiums I couldn't fill before, so that makes this a tough choice. But screw it. This channel hasn't spent nearly enough time in South America, and we now have enough subscribers to fill Marcelo Bielsa Stadium in Rosario, Argentina, home of the legendary club Newell's Old Boys. There's a lot to love here. It's in Independence Park, right off the city's main commercial drag, Pellegrini Avenue. And best of all, the club crest is a monogram that says knob. I don't know what the connotation of knob is in Spanish, but if you're a diehard supporter, these are just things you have to make peace with. Okay, let's talk about where this is all headed next. A couple weeks ago, I tweeted out this update from the Vital Vegas Twitter account, which I do like, and they said that the tunnel to Resorts World, which is the Strip property due west about a quarter mile from the convention center, was complete, but only included 1 travel lane, which is pretty funny from a capacity standpoint, but it turns out it wasn't really breaking news. Local station Fox 5 actually reported back on April 28 that the tunnel was complete. The Resorts World president described what the operation is going to be. Right now, it's in 1 tunnel, so 8 cars will come in, pick up passengers, take them to the convention center, and come back through. It's about 2,000 people per hour we can transport. Okay, I don't know who's doing the math for Resorts World. Well, strike that. I bet I know exactly who. But by my count, if you're platooning 8 cars through every 2 minutes, which is generous given that you can't run both directions, and even assuming 3 occupants per car, that's 240 cars an hour times 3 is 720. So the tunnel's complete. I went into Resorts World this past week to see what the deal is, and well, it looks like it's ready to go. The elephant sculpture is on point, the sign is up, the escalator has some vaguely futuristic lighting that's already turned on. So what's the holdup? Well, my understanding is permitting is still in process, which I assume means engineers are inspecting it. This is all speculation, but I think the tunnel has to conform with the county's quote-unquote amusement and transportation systems code, which has standards for stuff like go-karts, bungee jumping, and flame effects. But I'm hoping the one that actually applies is the standard for fixed guideway systems. And that piece of the county code, by reference, adopts the National Fire Protection Association's Standard 130 for fixed guideway transit and passenger rail systems. NFPA 130 specifies fire protection and life safety requirements for underground fixed guideway, which I would normally say does not apply to a vehicular tunnel, but the franchise agreement under which the boring company is operating is for what's supposed to be considered a monorail service. So what do I know? Whether the one-way tunnel can move 2,000 people an hour or like 700, honestly probably doesn't matter that much. Resorts World only has 3,500 rooms, and is there really going to be ravenous demand for a car trip that replaces a quarter-mile walking trip? I mean, all you're really doing here is denying people all the amenities that are on the walk. I'm talking all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue and the revelatory experience that is Siegel's Bagel Mania. What's even funnier is the Resorts World tunnel isn't even going to connect to the rest of the system yet. It's apparently going to terminate at a new Riviera station at the north end of the West Hall parking lot. I mean, it would be one thing if you could get a one-seat ride from Resorts World and get all the way to the South Hall, but that's not going to be an option yet. So look, I don't know what the future of this thing is. They do have approval to build out a 51-station system. And look, I understand people, even elected officials, get excited when things are sexy and new. If you're old enough to remember when the new Beetle came out, for the first year or two, every new Beetle you saw was clean and looked like it just got driven off the lot because, well, it probably was. They looked so cool. A couple of years later, they aren't really new. It was just a fleet of weird looking cars that were just as dirty and banged up as every other make and model. And now you barely see them anymore. So that's one potential fate. Or maybe the plot twist will be that they'll start being able to run driverless vehicles in the tunnels so they can at least save on operating cost. But it's 2022. If you can't run a driverless vehicle in a closed system where you control all the variables, all the hardscape and the striping, then what hope is there? I mean, Uber's stock reached crazy valuations based on the idea that they'd be able to make their entire fleet autonomous and start turning a profit. And, well, it just never happened. So I can't say I'm bullish on the Las Vegas Loop reaching some kind of useful operational efficiency. But again, I'm not a multi-billionaire, so take my pessimism with a grain of salt. That's all I got this week. Thanks for joining, and keep the great topic suggestions coming. As always, thanks to all the patrons who are joining up. There's over 100 now. I'll be back with a new episode next week, and I'll see you then.